What's up, man?
What up? Oh, wait, dang it, we did that again.
1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Hey, everybody.
If you wonder why we do that, it's because we've got to sync our audio and our video. Also, turns out our video is ratchet if you watched our last
Sorry, guys.
podcast.
Will's fault.
Yes, but also Cass's fault because she didn't tell me this.
Yeah,
She
Cass.
also
Boom,
didn't know
roasted.
this. I had to look it up. But this Nikon here. Okay, so we'll just give you a little background here.
True.
This is Cass's Nikon.
Wait. We'll just give you
Behind the scenes.
behind the
A
scenes.
video of behind the scenes while we do it.
Oh my
And then we
gosh.
post this on Instagram. Wait, that's a photo. Okay, there's Alan. Obviously, you see that. There's that camera, which is on Alan, which is not very good.
Sorry, guys.
So we're just going to switch off every
It's
other
not
week.
because of
It's
what
not
it's looking
terrible.
at, but it's because of the camera itself. It's
There's the camera.
50-50.
There's a camera we're using that's Cass's, and that one's like her first camera ever. And it looks really good, but they only take 20-minute videos because they're not made for videos. So anyway, that's what happened last time. If you're listening to this on Spotify, you have no idea what's going on.
That's fine.
Check out our YouTube. Check out our Instagram. You know, we're doing that cross.
Stay
we're doing
loyal.
that cross marketing.
Stay loyal.
Because we're gonna, monetize our cross market.
Will's been listening to a
clients.
lot of podcasts, so he thinks he's
I
all
made
smart
all those
into
things
business.
up. So yeah, this is on YouTube, but also on Spotify, essentially.
Hey, how about this? Since we're going behind the scenes,
I had one. Okay, go.
tell them one fact that people don't know about you normally. Like maybe, your friends know, but not all of our listeners know about you. What's one thing that you want people to know about you, just to give a fuller picture of who you are?
Okay. If you're on YouTube, this is gonna be way better for you. But I have a ET finger. I'll show the camera.
Oh, that is true. Stubby. It's not. It like doesn't catch like the bottom of your hand. Both of the cameras. It just looks like this.
That's my pointer finger. It looks like a toe. It also looks like ET. Both of my fingers are like that. I don't know. I was just born that way. People ask me if they got cut off or something. Just born.
No,
with,
as far
just
as you
born
know,
with,
don't
just
know.
Born with 2 toes on my. The rest of them are fine. They're normal. Just my pinky.
Which is
fingers.
actually the opposite of my son, because my son has fingers for toes, and he usually grabs things with his feet.
Oh,
Yeah, he'll like just be sitting there grabbing things, and he's 2.5. We didn't teach him that.
to himself when he gets into high school, middle school.
Or
It's embarrassing.
he has the best
gift.
talent. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I
So-
don't know if that counts as a fact, but there's mine. What's yours?
I was also going to mention my fingers. Just kidding. No, I wasn't.
We were meant to be.
Probably one fact is I'm related to Abraham Lincoln, and it's, you can ask my grandma. Shout out Grandma Kay.
I'm related to Robert E. Lee. The South in the Civil War. The South.
Did they live at the
General.
same time? Do you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They were probably enemies because generally E. Lee was a racist. I don't actually know that. My uncle told me that one time. I don't think it's true. That's why I gave you that look.
I did say that one time when I was in a church in Missouri, and someone was related to John Wilkes Booth. Like she was like, that was my great great uncle, and I was like, that was Abraham Lincoln was my great great uncle or whatever, great however many. And someone went, ooh, shots fired, and that was the best timed, because that joke, like, ooh, shots fired. That was the only time I laughed at that joke, and I was like, because that's brilliant. That's good.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Anyway,
Okay. One thing you've learned in seminary over the last few weeks.
that the book of Luke is amazing.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah. No. Well, okay. So I'm doing this thing called Portrait of Jesus, and I have to, with my words, I have to paint this picture of who Jesus is.
Nice.
I'm the Picasso of
Theology.
theology.
If you can tell from our last podcast on Calvinism.
Where I was just like this.
Alan he wasn't in a bad mood.
I
He
was
just
just
like this.
really tired, and they could probably tell that on camera because it was the
And you
high
had
def
the bougie
camera.
camera too.
Yeah, I should have been on this camera last week. Anyway, but Luke, okay, here's essentially my paper. I'll do it in bullet points. Mark is very broad, like strokes. Yep. Like it's very like boom, boom. And it's very balanced though too, right? So it will like really focus on his humanity and really focus on his divinity, broad strokes. Matthew is like an in-between. Matthew has a lot
Super
of details.
Jewish, right?
The most Jewish of the synoptics, what they say. Yet he has probably the most Gentile verse with the Great Commission, which is interesting. But he's kind of like a good in between. And then Luke is very, very, very precise. And some people even believe that like he was gathering all of these eyewitnesses, and that's what made it into this eyewitness account. Some people believe that he maybe even interviewed Mary, going like to when Jesus was born, when it says like she pondered things in her heart.
I think which I've been wrestling through The Chosen in general.
Yeah. See,
where I'm at with it,
saw
but
that.
I think that there's a scene in there where he interviews. I think it's Luke. Maybe it's a different one.
Another thing that's interesting, and this will be my last point, is it's all written to Theophilus, both Acts
and has double meaning, right?
Yes, it does. But I won't get into that right now.
That's a whole other paper.
Yeah, that's actually, I'm putting that in my next paper. But what's interesting is because it says most excellent Theophilus. And so what some people believe is that he was like a high Roman governing official, which means that he was most likely wealthy. And so then you get the rich young ruler in that, and then you get Zacchaeus, and they're both like meant to almost be counterparts to each other, of like where one doesn't accept the gospel and then one you actually see the proper response. And some people believe, well, I guess maybe what I'm drawing my conclusions of is, since he's so concerned with money here, it seems like he's writing to Theophilus in a way that like could be like, here's how to properly respond to the gospel, as if like he's trying to convince Theophilus, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of theories around who he is, but so that's something that I'm learning. Pretty cool, of like looking at those gospels and how they portray Jesus, which is the whole assignment. So shout out William Tennant.
Okay, that's good. All right. So last week we talked about Calvinism. I titled it just thoughts on Calvinism, because we're not like talking about, oh, this is why it's right versus Arminianism, or this is like all the arguments for it and all the counter argument. We weren't, that wasn't necessarily our goal, was to get super deep into why. I mean, I guess you can speak for yourself, but I would kind of, I talked about last week how I don't really like how it falls under the name of a man. Yeah. And I felt like it violates the 1 Corinthians. It's chapter 2 or 3, I think,
or has potential to.
Yeah. Could
or not
align yourself with a man and his
more than Christ,
him over Jesus. And so I don't really like to be like, I'm a Calvinist, but I would certainly say that God is sovereign over all things, including salvation.
And that's actually something, and we'll get into this maybe a little bit more. Who knows? Maybe we're diving in right now.
Episode number 3 coming later.
Here we go. But what I was going to say is, what's interesting, what I've learned in leadership, here we go. We're just going.
Okay.
Is that, that usually when you don't use words like Calvinism, or when you
doesn't bother people.
No, when you just talk about God's sovereignty, everyone's in agreement. It's like, yeah,
Reckless
God's in
Love.
control.
Got to be the most Calvinist song in the world.
Explain.
Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending reckless of God chases me down.
Fights till I'm found.
Fights till I'm found.
It's like the ABCs. You have to start with A.
Leaves the 99. Yeah. But then the bridge, especially, there's no shadow you won't lie. The mountain you won't climb up coming after me.
It's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I know
there's no wall you won't keep. But a very personal coming after you and saving you.
Yes.
Which is different than you've been given the opportunity
to be
saved. And it's your responsibility to decide whether you want to or not. And so I agree with you that oftentimes it's like there's something, and this, I hope this isn't a straw man or like a misrepresentation, but something people will say is, you praying for your friend to come to know Jesus would be a violation. You're asking God to violate his free will and to save him or her, obviously, but you are asking God to override what they think, what they want, and to show them himself. And so I hope that's not a misrepresentation. I'm not trying. As hopefully you've been able to tell, we try to be very open.
That's not true.
And unified in this whole thing.
You're so biased.
And so, because it's, we've stated it's a secondary issue, but all that.
For sure.
What were you saying before I interrupted you with that part? Oh, you said if you don't use the language,
me, I have, one other fact people need to know about me.
This is true.
Is that I have terrible recall, especially in conversation. So when you say hey, what were we talking about before what we were just talking about? I'll go, hey,
God
man.
only knows.
Yeah.
Spirit of God.
You know what?
help me.
If the Spirit doesn't reveal it to us right now, we're never going to know.
Moving on.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually I agree. Usually it's not an issue. If you say God is sovereign, people are like,
I remember what we were talking about.
Cool.
Now. Thanks for
if you say God's in control. If you say God's in control, people, yeah, for sure.
Yep.
But then you use terminology like Calvinism. It's kind of game over for a lot of times for that conversation, or just fired up. And so, yeah, I guess that's one tip, honestly, is that my phone?
No, it's mine.
Oh.
Sorry. All my stuff is connected. It's fine. No, it's just a text.
Just a text. What's a text?
Well, I think maybe just to clarify. So last episode, what we left off on was, so I guess last episode, we talked a lot about what does it look like interpersonally to deal with people you disagree with.
What are ways people go wrong? Kind of jerky ways to do it.
There's our thoughts on Calvinism.
Yeah, just thoughts on Calvinism.
Interpersonally. Where maybe this episode we wanted to talk about what does it look like leading those people, like, because there's going to be people, whether it's in Reach or whether in a congregation, who have differing viewpoints of a secondary, tertiary issue that we need to help lead through. And so first one was talking about, what was my tip just now? Let's see, recall.
It was trigger words.
Trigger words. Yeah, I guess that's not really a tip.
Use trigger words. I think that's a great tip.
Oh, great tip.
That's
do
something
do that, everybody.
I wish I knew earlier. Just if you're trying to make a point about something and you know a word is going to bring people's guardrails up, just, you don't have to use it. Even something I've been doing up on the campus is "you're a sinner" is very non-translatable to college students today, because they immediately think, oh, you're like a fundamentalist Republican. All this
Usually
stuff.
They sound like that too.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great impression.
But instead I've been saying something to the effect of, you're morally corrupt, or you're morally falling.
Same meaning. So we're not trying to change the gospel.
No.
We're just taking
it's
that.
Just a bit more.
How do we communicate that better? And that doesn't mean not to ever use the terms, because I think sometimes we can go too far with that, and then we don't provide any sort of like systematic structure for people to think through.
Well, Calvinism can rightly identify something really easily and really quickly. If you say, oh, that's Calvinism. If the other person knows what that is, then you just saved yourself 20 minutes explaining. So there's obviously a place for it.
And it also helps for people further study, which is a good thing. Because if you don't really know what you're looking into, but there's something, it's just a lot harder. So there's value in it, but it has to be met with kind of that, I guess, just that balanced approach.
Yep. So this podcast could probably be way more broad than just Calvinism, into how do you lead through, like we were just talking about, women's roles in the church, or tongues, prophecy, and spiritual gifts, stuff like that.
Which you just did a little bit ago when you were singing "Reckless Love." You were doing tongues. I don't know if you knew it.
Yeah. We should talk about that at some point.
Probably in like 8 or 9 years.
Part 3. Yeah. So yeah. It's
or what if we this whole season is just part 1, part 2, part 3?
All these trigger words that'll get a bunch of views.
Is that what we're after? We're after views. Is that our mission statement, man?
Channel marketing, man? No, it is.
You just
not.
revealed
It
your
is
heart,
not.
man. You just revealed your heart.
It is not our goal to make a bunch of money, and we don't make any money. So
far, we're doing pretty good at that goal.
Yeah. So I think that's not necessarily a goal. I think that's one good thing.
What tip would you say about leading people through disagreement? Is there anything that you've learned over the years? Oh, this guy swallows so
really
loud.
The first one that comes to mind.
Drink water right behind me too, and I'm like, why are you drinking water
behind you, staring in the back of your head? Well, the first one that comes to mind is one I briefly mentioned. Actually, it was pretty long last time, but theological triage, teaching people where to place certain doctrines.
Yeah,
correctly.
Yeah, that's big.
What's next? Just do
I think that you almost have to.
Machine gun. Or what's it called?
Machine Gun Kelly.
When you switch back and forth really quick. Popcorn. Machine gun. Shotgun.
Yeah, I don't know. Don't know what you're thinking of there. Popcorn's good. I think that. Okay, I was going to tell a story.
Tell me a story.
In 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, Oh my gosh. In those middle school years where I was just a good looking guy, I was like
I always wanted to look
45
like
pounds. Anyway, that has
And you
nothing.
drove a Mustang, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I would see you drive around that Mustang, I was like in 6th grade, and Alan's like in sophomore.
I
or
never
junior,
had a Mustang. I
driving
thought you
around
were
a
joking.
Mustang.
No, I never had a
You
Mustang.
didn't have a light blue Mustang?
No, definitely not.
I always thought you had a light
I
blue
had like
Mustang.
a 1992 really old Toyota truck.
Maybe you just looked so good in that truck. I thought it was a Mustang.
Maybe you just really had high thoughts of me.
Okay, sorry.
Anyway, I was what they called a peer counselor. And I think it was mostly because the school didn't have enough money to deal with the students' problems. And so they're like, hey, what if we just get other students to help out? And they made me do one. And so they like taught us how to counsel people, which is probably honestly where a lot of like my mediation skills have come from, because they trained me how to do that. But what they did is they like walked us through how to like help people in conflict. And I think that the church needs to help people do that, because in our world right now, the only way we see handling conflict is by arguing, whether it's like on Facebook or in person, whatever it is, where I think that there's an art to hearing people's points of view and not getting defensive.
Yeah.
And I think that that needs to be learned. I think that's a skill that we just don't have. And I think it's really important to be like, how do we just disagree?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we also just, how do I hear your thoughts without me interrupting? Or like hanging on to like certain words where it's like, I got you here, you know, but it's like actually trying to hear people's hearts and
Not
what their thoughts are.
Not take it personal too.
Yeah. And I think that that's a big thing, is oftentimes, especially around Calvinism, it becomes our identity.
Yeah.
Like I think we talked a little bit about that. And so then whenever it's like, you know, people say Calvinism's wrong, well, in some ways, then it's a shot at our identity. And I think we have to remember that our identity is in Christ. And so they're two separate things.
I just read something similar to that effect this morning on hell. It was about C.S. Lewis's view on hell.
H-E-L-L double hockey sticks.
H-E-L-L double hockey sticks. Michael Scott. But he said something to the effect of when a topic or when an issue hits very close to home, we have a really hard time not being emotional about it. And so the topic of hell, right, we likely all know people. We have to, all of us know people who have died not knowing Jesus, who, if we take a biblical view on hell, we would have to say,
there's my alarm.
1 second, please.
That was smooth transition.
Yeah, that was good. I had to restart the camera, so what happened last time doesn't happen again.
Nice.
So if there's a small glitch in the video, that'd be why.
And we'll just put First Baptist logo up there.
Yeah. Sponsored by Jimmy Toma. Anyway, his point was, when something hits close to home, it's hard to talk about it and not get emotional. So obviously that's all political stuff going on right now. Is all of these things are super personal to us and things we hold really dearly.
Yep. For
one side, it's a potential loss of a perceived human right. For another side, it's a potential loss of everything that's ever been good about where we live, right? And that could apply to many things. But when it feels personal, or when there's impacts in real life, it's hard not to get emotional. And so obviously a topic like hell or Calvinism, that one's, it's hard to stay impartial and go, yeah, you're telling me that my grandpa died not knowing the Lord, to my knowledge. And so you're telling me that God chose not to love him before time began? Like that can, right? It can be really personal and hard to work through when those things are really personal. And so,
well, I was going to say too, I think one, it's important to teach people how to separate their identity from these things.
Definitely. And
that doesn't mean you can't take comfort in them. Because when my cousin died, I remember thinking, God's in control, right? And that was a huge comfort for me.
Praise God.
So, and that's in a lot of ways a really cool thing.
Yep.
But I think one, teaching people how to separate their identity between doctrine and Christ, right? While making sure you as the leader as well know how to do that. I think that those are two tips. Like, I think that that's two separate things. Teaching people how to do that, how to love each other, and making sure your heart is actually, as you go into that,
consistent with it.
Mhm.
To piggyback off that, I think education in general, if you don't know, or if your people, the people you're teaching, leading, don't know about these things. I know for me, I avoided certain things for a long time because they were made out to be the thing you couldn't talk about,
like
or they
what
were the boogeyman.
maybe one example, just so.
Well, Calvinism was
Yeah,
one,
okay.
but also there is a famous preacher who makes egalitarianism out to be the
Egalitarianism.
sorry, good call, is the view that women can be pastors.
Yeah. Okay.
And hold authority in the church.
Usually you get mad at me because I'm usually just a second ahead.
No,
of
it's
asking,
good. It's good.
Because are you like, I was going to get there. I was going to get there.
That is true. I usually am, but that time I wasn't. I was just going to move on.
Yeah, that's fair.
But this individual, and I think maybe it's not his intention, but it's certainly something he does, is he scares you into even considering a view because, then you just go straight liberal and you don't even know Jesus anymore and you don't hold the Bible high with any authority. And so for me, as somebody who very much believes in the authority of the Bible, I'm like, I'm not even going to listen or dive into that point of view whatsoever.
You're stupid if you go there,
or even study it, because then for even you just looking into it is you questioning the authority. And so that kind of like fear mongering tactic, I think, is really a disservice, because then people defend these secondary issues like their primary issues, and they can't hear anybody else and they can't talk through issues with anybody else, because the second anybody else brings up a different perspective, they're gone.
And we believe then that the truth can't stand by itself.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was something that Jimmy said this week that I thought was really good. But yeah, like then we don't trust. We think we need to defend the Bible and hide certain things and manipulate certain things.
Yeah.
But it's like, if it's the truth of the word, the Spirit is in you, then it's going to be able to stand by itself.
And so I think education is a big one. Like, just even what is Calvinism? What is Arminianism? Even if it's basic, you don't have to be ultra knowledgeable about it or something. But then when somebody hears that down the line, they're not just blown away like, oh my gosh, what in the world is this? They're familiar with it. They understand, hopefully, that it's not a primary division thing, because that's another thing. If you don't educate somebody on something like that, and I know there's a lot of people, especially our age, but I guess I'm thinking more specifically my age, if they hear somebody, like, it's common to go, oh, that person's a Calvinist. And it's talked about like, that's a false teacher. Oh my gosh, you better run from them. And it's just a lack of understanding what it actually is, like the history of it. And so anyway, I think education is another important way to lead people through it.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, usually you can tell, at least from me as a leader, I can tell where people's hearts are when they bring up the topic. Like if there's like a lot of passion, but the passion kind of like expresses itself in a way of, I don't know, just like being mean or rude or whatever. Yep. That's usually a place where it's like, I don't know if you know the other side. Mm-hmm. It's usually a it flag for me.
Yep.
In a way of like, hey, do you think that it's worth representing that side, these brothers and sisters, if it is a secondary, tertiary issue? Well, because I think we have that responsibility.
Yeah, I get that burden for sure.
Yep. Well,
I had something I was going to say. It was profound.
It was probably around about fishing.
Fishers of men.
There we go.
Anyway, you got any others? That's my education. Other tips for leaders to lead through tough issues. Doesn't even just have to be this one.
Don't be scared to have conversations, I think, is one of the things we're talking about.
Oh, that's what I was going to say, is why do you believe what you believe at a personal level? I think that's important, because you should be able to approach the word and brothers and sisters willing to be changed. I was just telling somebody about this at lunch, but I think oftentimes I'll approach scriptures, like certain scriptures, and twist them to fit my pre-understanding and my system of thinking rather than let it change me and be cut by it and changed by it.
And we talked a little bit about that last episode too.
Yeah.
So we're
be
just
willing to be changed.
we're just saying the same thing.
Two trick ponies, secondary thoughts on Calvinism. Yeah. Anything else there leadership wise? Yeah. I mean, we could wrap it up too.
I think that if you're a leader, people will see how you love people who disagree with you. And I think it's really important that you set the tone of how you love people that are on different sides of the aisle. I think that's a political term, but
honestly, even politically
on it. Yeah.
Cause I'm thinking of people obviously in ministry leadership, but even in their family, how they lead their family through things like this. Your dad's amazing at that. He is very good at that. Shout out Jerron. Shout out. He's never listened a day in his life to this, but shout out. One day we'll get him. But even at a political level, like we can talk a bunch about loving brothers and sisters, all this stuff. But a lot of times we can be really, really ugly in the way we argue as Christians. And that does not portray Christ. And so I think just as a general rule in life, not just with these things, but is to be very generous and loving to people. What's that? I just quoted it. It's from a guy in Germany. My wife. You get a call. You can pick up like that's probably my son. Hey, we're recording a podcast. Okay. I love doing that. That's the best. She's gonna be mad at you. Yeah. But here's what I wait. Okay, go. No, I need to look it up. In all things charity. What's that? In necessities. Okay, you go. I'm looking it up. Here's all I was going to say is I think sometimes we mistake boldness for just being a jerk. Yes. Like we think, Amen. Oh, well, I got to be bold. I've got to stand up. And what we equate that to is I've got to get really passionate and yell at you. And that's not boldness. I think boldness is actually being gentle because it's a lot harder and it takes a lot more to be bold and loving and hear the whole conversation. Yeah. Like that's being bold than it is just, well, you're stupid. You're stupid idiot. This was the quote. And I think it's a good thing to end on if you're good. No, let's keep talking. Okay. It's from a guy called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. He's German. Should we tag him? Rupertus. He's dead. Very dead. Still got Instagram, maybe? Maybe, who knows? He was alive during Luther, I think. Rupertus Meldenius. I'm butchering that. This quote's often attributed to Augustine or Augustine. I think they've pretty much decided, they being the internet has pretty much decided that it was not Augustine. Who knows? But the quote goes, in essentials, unity; in non-essentials, liberty; in all things, charity. It's good. Amen. God bless you guys. We hope you have a great day. Just say the boys. And, we just are really blessed by your being here with us today. And man, we're just really blown away by the support, by the love, by the brotherly affection. Go therefore and greet one another with a brotherly kiss. And you were the one that wanted to be done talking. You guys be blessed. Be blessed this day. God bless you. God bless your family. Seek first the kingdom of heaven. This is why we don't have any listeners. Will be added to you. Amen. To God be the glory. Goodbye.